Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Money in Motion. Apologies for the first stream, a little bit of technical difficulties interrupting, but we're back in live now. Market's taken a bit of a turn past couple days, and no bids really stepping in just yet. Maybe a couple assets we could look at and talk about, but title of today's show is The Local Bottom In. I don't know. We shall see. But like Monte and I were talking before the show, he said, I don't think the bottom's in, CJ. What do you think? And I said, I don't know, but I can tell you what I'm doing. And that is, I think, the only true answer.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, that's the only right answer. I was more asking what you think. I know you don't know. You're not Nostradamus, but
I don't like to think too hard either.
But yeah, no, markets are looking interesting today. Bitcoin, testing the lows here at 26.2, definitely worth talking about. And for me, I mean, it's really as simple as this. I want to talk about some altcoins as well, but before we do, let's start with Bitcoin. If you don't mind, I'm going to just pull up my screen real quick. This is a dangerous scenario for Bitcoin. This is a chart that you don't want to see, and it's very reminiscent of the chart that many altcoins were flashing last night. For instance, if you take a look at Ethereum Classic and what it looked like before the dump, looks very similar to what Bitcoin is at right now, right? And then Ethereum Classic dipped all the way down to 13.6. So if you were in our Discord, you caught that trade. That trade is now off the table because the funding rate is really flipped negative. So I don't think the value is there anymore. But regardless, the formation looks very similar to what we're seeing here in Bitcoin. And when you get these breakdown levels, they're critical for a reason, right? We bounced here. There's no, and like CJ said, no bids coming in here. It looks like we're headed lower. So if you are making a bet, I'd be making a bet to the downside. And what's going to be really, really important, and I can't emphasize this enough in the coming days here, is watching the funding rates of these various altcoins and deciding which ones to short if you do want to short. Because I do think that, now yesterday I wasn't, that confident in the shorts, but now that Bitcoin's looking like it's going to break down below 26K and perhaps head down to the 25K level, I think that would lead to a big sell-off in a lot of the altcoins and people being, forced to, just dump. And ultimately, you can see that a lot of the alts are up today, and that's because of short covering, profit taking after big moves to the downside. Now, the ones that are up the most were the ones that were down the most. That's just, the typical kind of reflexivity that you'd expect to see with the market. But when it comes to the crypto-related altcoins, one thing I would highly recommend is look at funding rates. So yesterday, if you remember correctly, I was talking about Ethereum Classic. I've been talking about this one all week. Look at how negative the funding rate got. That right there is the indication that this is a crowded trade. This trade has become crowded and it is no longer favorable from a risk reward perspective because of the possibility of flash liquidations. So as soon as I saw this, I exited. Shared that with the members of our Discord. Part of the basis of my trade was the funding rate, and this became a very crowded short trade. People tried to catch this, this move late, and as a result, they're getting squeezed out. And you can see it as well if we switch to liquidations. Not too many, but still 202,000 worth of shorts liquidated in Binance, or on Binance 217K in the last 24 hours. Most of those have been this morning. And getting back to the big picture here in Bitcoin, I think a breakdown below this level, you can really kind of line it up the same way I lined up the Ethereum Classic chart. And of course, this is contingent on the S&P. I want to get CJ's opinion on that. But this is a breakdown level. What I expect to see is something along the lines of this, where we break down below the level. Okay, what am I doing wrong? Where we break down below the level, come back up, retest it, and then head back down. That's a very plausible scenario in my mind, and that would lead to a big sell-off in the alts. But again, I highly, highly encourage you to watch the funding rates of the altcoins. Great website for that is coinglass.com. That, in conjunction with sentiment from Trade the Chain, I think you combine those two things and then volume, and you have a much clearer picture on which altcoins you should be shorting. So that's kind of how I pick and choose what alts to short. I look at the funding rate, I look at the volume, and I look at the sentiment. And from there, that's how I make my picks. And Ethereum Classic did look favorable, and that's why I decided to take that short. But now we've seen it become a very crowded trade. So it's not looking as favorable from a risk reward perspective. So I would look elsewhere, and I'll provide you with some of those ideas in a bit, but I've been rambling on for quite a while now. So I want to pass it over to CJ. And by the way, CJ, love that quarter zip you're wearing there. That's dope.
Appreciate it. I don't get too many clothes. This was a gift from the old man, so appreciate it.
Looks nice.
So yeah, let's look at some charts. Nikkei still rolling over. China really still rolling over. Real estate green on the day for now. We'll see. I did take one trade yesterday in the Trade the Chain Discord. And it is still fairly new, but I feel like I should explain the reasoning for it. So this was last night around 9:13 Central Time. Just took a long in Platinum, excuse me. And in the weekly report, this is something we had talked about in terms of like some metals that were actually showing crowded positioning to the short side. So if you look at palladium, this is one that I've been tracking for a long time, but it's just never really shown you a good opportunity to bid, even though we have been overextended in terms of like accumulation from commercials for months now on the back of this, boom and bust cycle. I think inevitably there probably will be an echo bubble in palladium, but as for now, I mean, the market's just going to do what it's going to do. I don't think it's really time yet. However, going over to platinum and kind of looking at those similarities, this is the longest that commercials have been since our recent local bottom in August of 2022. So put in that double bottom there when, commercials were pretty much neutral or flat. And as you can see, ever since this downtrend, they've really been accumulating. And so maybe this is the time where the downtrend actually experiences an inflection point. And the whole thinking is like, I don't really know if the market's going to keep going up. I don't know if the market's going to go down. But let's say, for instance, if the market recovers and goes up today, I like the aspect of platinum longs because like we have good relative strength. Like this is a pretty nice correlation failure in terms of risk on assets like gold, metals, silver. Everything's positive today in terms of metals for the most part. And then you see big tech really still selling off. So let's say in a world where maybe big tech actually rallies on Monday or the end of today because people are just taking profits on shorts, what are the assets that could be most likely to bounce back the hardest? And I think it's the ones with crowded positioning. And in this case, like platinum. So that's why I took a long, and also the correlation failure I had mentioned just metals overall basically being green across the board with risk and the Nasdaq being down. So, if we have a reverse, those should probably run the hardest. But yeah, any thoughts on that, Monte?
Yeah, it's kind of the same sort of thesis that I have for the altcoins, right? The Bob. Bob always makes me laugh mid-sentence. You need to stop doing that, Bob. But I lost my train of thought. But
We're
it's kind of the same
going
thesis.
platinum.
Yeah, it's
All
the
right.
same thesis, that I had with the crowded trades for the altcoins. When they become too crowded, when you get that profit taking, it becomes more extreme. It becomes more, you see a sharper move to the upside, right? That's just the natural state of things. The more crowded the trade, the more people that are in the trade, the when the profit taking does occur, it's gonna push the asset up a lot higher, and that is indicative of a crowded trade. So I think that same sentiment can be applied to many of the altcoins as well. I'm personally not trading any of the metals right now, but I do like that setup. What are you giggling at?
I don't know who trades that stuff. I've never. There's one other person I know in real life.
Peter Schiff?
Well, I don't think he trades it. He just has his traders like buy
Is
it
it?
and hold it for 10 years. Isn't that what you do with gold and silver? You just hold them in your safe.
Yeah, you hoard it like you're a dragon in a Lord of the Rings movie, Smog. Um, But anyways, I want to move on real quick, CJ, to some altcoin plays. I just have one that I want to share with everyone, and I'm going to talk about why I like it as a setup, so that you can look for other coins with comparable setups and not just all pile into this one. I'm not in this asset. I have no stake in it. I'm
Can I
just
take a guess at what you're going to say?
You're
The
gonna be
asset.
wrong, but go ahead.
INJ.
Wrong. But it may have, like I said, it may have a comparable setup as to the coin I'm about to mention. And, I would actually, knowing what I know about INJ, I would guess that it is actually very, very similar in terms of the three things I mentioned earlier: funding rate, volume, and sentiment. And one thing that is uh, checking all those boxes for me today is theta. See, you never would have guessed it, CJ, in a million
I
years.
never would. I never would have.
But what would look at this wick of distribution here? Nobody wants this above 64 cents. That is massive, massive distribution. And furthermore, if you take a look at CoinGlass, like I had mentioned, and so you can actually sort by funding rate, right? So the most positive assets are the ones that people are, longing the most. But as you can see, Theta is number 8 in terms of funding rate, highest funding rate. That means people are still longing this and paying a premium to do so. A point 1% premium, small premium, but nonetheless, it tells me that's not a crowded trade to the downside, which again, that tilts the risk reward in our favor because we're less likely to get blown up by a flash of liquidations or profit taking. So, looking at this chart here, this is the 15-minute chart. I think there's, looking at what I just said with the CoinGlass chart and the funding rate, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for this to make a run back down towards the lows, especially now that we're seeing equity markets. Well, we'll see what equity markets do. I think it is contingent on equity markets. They are kind of bouncing back, but I do think that they'll kind of finish the week sideways. We'll see a lot of puts forced to capitulate, and then perhaps see a little bit of a rebound on Monday, and then back down on Tuesday. We'll see. Um, we'll see if we fill this gap today. That's going to be a big thing for me. If we fill this and then come back down, that is like the most likely scenario, I think, in terms of S&P price action. But as for the Nasdaq, um, you know, I'm not as convinced. There's a lot of big names that look really, really weak right now. Like, I mean, if we look at them from a daily perspective, Amazon, Nvidia, I mean, all of these things opening down massively today. So a little bit of fear in the markets there. But going back to theta, long tangent, getting back to the original premise, you can see like when you have these wicks down here, that's a prime target. And that's what I use for the target of the Ethereum Classic trade, right? Because that's where you see supply absorption. And there's some heavy, heavy volume. If you looked at if we look at the trade the chain dashboard, um, and you look at the coins, you'll see that theta trading volume is up day over day, and that in itself, to me, is indicative of the fact that people are dumping this, because if the funding rate is positive and the trading volume is going up, it means that people are spot selling. So I think we're seeing people dump theta, and based on the relative trading volume, the let's take a quick look at the sentiment. I mean, that's a big flip in terms of sentiment right there. That's another trigger for entry. So it's checking all three boxes of what I consider the altcoin short, checklist, and that's why I like theta as a short. I'm not in it, like I said. I have no stake in it personally, but I may enter it after today's episode. Told you never would have guessed it.
Yeah, no, I probably would have said like three things prior to that. I don't know if I would have ever gotten to theta.
Anything
Yeah, I
else?
mean, like we said before the show, I mean, it didn't take long for coin to get to 73 or 70 to 75 gap. And I still can't buy it here, unfortunately.
I know.
So,
So you don't think that? I mean, the title of the show, "Local Bottom is in." You don't think so?
dude, I don't know. Like,
I know. I'm asking what you think. I'm asking what you think, not what you know.
it doesn't matter what I think. Like, what I think is irrelevant to what the market is going to do. So it's not even worth like discussing. What I think could happen, I could see multiple like scenarios, and I have no higher conviction in any of them.
Well, let's hear them.
Well, I texted you last night, and I was like, I know this can't be predicted, but I do feel like we could potentially have some type of black swan in the next 1 to 3 months. Black swans or like market catalysts that really lead to market crashes usually will occur once the market starts declining a little bit and you have everybody kind of in complacency, which could be where we are right now. And then when you compare it to like the cycle of 2018 to 2020 in that bear market, what we've experienced through 2022 to now leading up to 2024, that's when we had COVID and that black swan events or just a lot of volatility. So maybe we're in a similar phase. I don't know what it's going to be. I've been hearing about Evergrande forever. I don't think that's got any real merits. I don't know. Like, I don't know. It could come out of the housing sector. So that was kind of my point yesterday as well about talking about trading the secular trend. Like, even though I think values today are probably good long term, like I have to be very careful with leverage over the next like 6 months in case we run into some type of like remote event risk. And, we'll see. I actually think it would be quite a blessing because you'd be able to get prices of crypto and all types of assets at a fire sale. I remember seeing COVID and watching Bitcoin drop like 40, 50% in one day. And I held some spot. Luckily, I wasn't liquidated, but I also did have some dry powder and I considered it like a gift. In the bear market, I always like looked for lower prices and was really like enthusiastic about them coming because like I didn't have as much capital back then, so I wanted to get as much Bitcoin as possible for like the lowest price. So I didn't going about a bit of a tangent here, but I think you get like the point. I do want to share one post in Discord. Monte,
Yeah.
any thoughts on any of that before I get to this one post?
No, I think you're right. I mean, that Evergrande news, how long has that been a thing? Like over a year now. But yeah, what's the horse got to say?
So he's just highlighting the previous echo bubble and what we saw last cycle. And of course, this doesn't have to repeat, but it's kind of been the nature of how Bitcoin's rotating throughout time. And as you can see throughout this period, once we ended, we did have our remote event risk, which came in the form of COVID. And, we're coming up against that type of like timeline. Of course, history doesn't have to repeat in this way, but there's not really a whole lot of catalysts. When GCR went away, he was like study 2020 and 2019. And I think this is kind of what we see is just like downward sideways chop and maybe a complacency capitulation event. But
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter. Like it only matters if the market if it actually happens. And like I'm not gonna be like Michael Berry and be like, oh, we're going to zero, sell everything. That's not my job to tell people what to do with their money. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Bob lists out some potential black swans. The thing is, like, it could be potentially anything, right? Like the things that Bob lists here, an escalation of the war between Europe and Ukraine. Like literally, it could be anything. That's the thing about a black swan is you don't know what it is or when it's going to occur. But I do agree that these are conditions in which typically we would you would see a black swan occur. We don't always, you can't expect it to occur, but these are the conditions in which, something happens. Like I could see some major volatility incoming soon. I mean, we've already got some major volatility, but yeah, we'll see. We shall see.
it should be your job.
It's true.
Wink, wink. Yeah.
So last thing I'll ask you, CJ, before we wrap things up, crypto related equities, beyond coin. Let's talk about the miners. Mara, Riot. Interesting little bit of a divergence between the two today. I don't know if you noticed that, but Mara down almost twice as much as Riot, which is a bit atypical, given the fact that the two have been moving more or less in tandem throughout the last week. But do you have any thoughts on Mara? And I mean, look at this chart.
I mean, I think while Riot is down less than Mara today, if you were to compare both of them, yeah, like you see how Riot's already round tripped its ETF gains.
Yeah.
Mara's like 1 day away from that, it looks like.
Yeah. So maybe some opportunity there in terms of underperformance from Mara relative to the rest of what is already an incredibly weak sector. That's like, that is worth noting because you're right, CJ. Like Riot's already back to levels at which it was at prior to the ETF news. Mara still has room to the downside. That is potential opportunity. And I was just wondering if you were kind of seeing that the same way. I mean, this is an underperforming sector. Finding an underperforming asset in an underperforming sector, I think that's a big opportunity. What are your thoughts?
I do agree. Personally, I haven't looked into the miners as much in terms of like how they could perform. I do think they will continue to perform well in terms of like high beta to the upside to Bitcoin, but I haven't bought any I think you're just in the similar boat as Bitcoin, coin, and Nasdaq, and a lot of similar assets where it's like, show me some type of like. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by questions. Yeah, there you go.
If
What was I
only
talking
CJ
about?
could.
Coin. All right.
If only CJ controlled all of the world's capital. What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could I don't even want to think about the bastardization of society that could occur after that. But anyways, yeah, I mean, just wait. Like, I have to wait for some form of like technical bottoming, and maybe in coin we get it today if we close green, but still haven't gotten it yet. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like when Tesla was crashing. It's like just let it fall, and then once everybody talks about how crazy the chart looks and how they don't want to buy something at a 52-week low, then I'll start getting very interested. That one market rebellion roundtable was burned in my brain with Bryn Talkington and everybody like, no, I can't touch Tesla here. It's at a 52-week low, and then like within the next week or two, it rallies like 40%. And I just haven't seen that yet with the crypto equities, but it's probably coming. So I hopefully that helps.
Damn, Brendan Talkington catching a stray there.
Oh, that's a good, like, I agree with that rule. Like, she wasn't wrong at the time. It's
I
just
know.
like when you look at what subsequently happened the week
Yeah,
later, it's kind of funny to look back. And even I do that, right? We all get emotional. We're human beings, like we're fallible. We get it. But being able to like have that self-awareness, I think, is also important.
absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting day. That's no doubt about that. And as always, CJ and I will be hanging out in the Discord. So if you guys would like to join us and get access to the Trade the Chain platform, you can do so at tradethechain.com. You can get a 14-day free trial, totally free. If you don't like it, you can cancel it anytime. But you get access to our insights and basically 24 access to myself, CJ, and Nick. And also, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. It really helps out the channel. But thank you guys so much. Lots of great comments today, lots of great participation. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday. Take care and happy